Hello, my name is Terry Badger. I'm the managing editor at BAI and host of the BAI Banking Strategies podcast. Thank you for joining us for our webinar presented by Alkami, One Modern Solution to Solve Legacy Payment Problems. While many financial institutions search for the next great payment system, savvy institutions are also focusing on modernizing the delivery of existing payment systems to reduce operational expense and to improve the client experience. Today, you'll hear about the benefits Trustmark National Bank experienced by using a single platform to modernize the delivery of ACH and check positive pay, translate EDI information, ACH return, and NOC information. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. If you have any tech issues on your end, please know that a recording of today's webinar will be sent out to view on demand. And if we have a problem on our end, we will try to get it fixed as quickly as possible. We will be using the polling feature during today's webinar. Please note that you will not see the polling questions if you are viewing in the full screen mode. So we ask that you minimize the module, so that you can take part in today's polling. We'll end the webinar with a question and answer period. At any time during the discussion, you can type your question into the Q&A box on your screen. And finally, at the end of today's webinar, an online evaluation will appear on your screen. Your feedback is important to us at BAI as we work to address key issues impacting the industry, so please take a few minutes to complete the survey. It's now my pleasure to introduce today's presenters. Laura Hartness-Smith is Senior Vice President and Director of Deposits and Product Strategy for Trustmark National Bank. Laura is a member of the 2015 Mississippi Economic Council's Leadership Mississippi class and a 2018 recipient of Leaders in Finance by the Mississippi Business Journal. She currently serves on MasterCard's U.S. Commercial Advisory Council. And Debbie Peace is Vice President and General Manager of Alkami's Multi-Payment Fraud Prevention Solution, ACH Alert. Debbie has more than 25 years devoted to the ACH industry. She served on the Federal Reserve Board's Consumer Advisory Council, was invited to demonstrate ACH Alert to the OCC in New York, and was engaged by Tennessee's banking commissioner to provide ACH training for that state's bank examiners. We're glad to have both of you with us. Debbie, let me hand things over to you now.
Thank you, Terry. Hi, Laura. Thank you for joining us today, everybody. Just would like to thank you again, Laura, for your willingness to talk today and share some of your experience. So we're going to be talking today about modernizing check payment handling as well as different things regarding ACH. And I've had the privilege of working with Laura for 8 or 9 years now, Laura?
About that, that's right.
So we have some things I think we can share with everyone today.
So let's start, Debbie and Laura, by polling the audience here. We have a question here. We've been hearing checks are going away for years. If we could bring up the poll number 1, please. Thank you. Do you think checks are going to disappear in the next 5 to 10 years? This is an audience poll. So audience, please weigh in on that. We'll stand by here for a few minutes to give everybody a chance to cast their vote. Well, I would say that it seems to be pretty lopsided on the no side. Debbie, let me hand that back to you, and you and Laura maybe can tell us what you think that may mean.
Well, this is always a good sanity check, isn't it, Laura? Because I think this pretty much aligns with our thoughts as well. If we could move the poll question or the results, would like to maybe talk a little bit about that, Laura, in terms of why you think checks are not going to be going away.
Absolutely. So do you know, everyone in the audience, when it was originally stated when checks would be out of the industry? 2021. So I think we're safe to say that checks are here, and it's going to take a little bit more time for them to get out of the industry for sure. I can specifically speak that, the Fed did a study last year, and they're still processing over 14 billion checks annually. That's a massive amount of transactions still occurring through paper. Trustmark specifically, we process 35 million annually. We've got about 600 customers that are on positive pay, and through that they issue about 11,000 checks monthly. So we've got some time before checks go out of the industry for sure.
And Laura, why do you think it's taking so long to get checks out of the payment system today?
Yeah, I think that, businesses appreciate the aspect of float still. Everything is getting centered and more out into the industry related to real-time payments. But as we see that businesses still like to send a check to people to pay so that they can hold on to the check, because you're still putting that onus on someone else to take time to go to the bank or to make that deposit. So there's still that aspect of float that they appreciate.
Because of this perception or this feeling that checks has been, would be gone by 2021, do you think that has made the vendors in the marketplace a little reluctant to build solutions around checks because of anticipating that gradual decline?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think you see a lot of vendors making big pushes and fintechs out there trying to get more to the real-time payment channel. And unfortunately, there's a lot of us banks out there, and the reality of the world is we're still on a lot of old fragmented, hosted systems and solutions. And again, we processed 35 million checks last year at Trustmark alone. So with the amount of volume of checks that are still coming through, we've got an ownership and a responsibility to our customer to be sure that we're delivering and protecting their account and their data, and we've got to provide a solution to help do that. So,
well, I can tell you from my perspective as we walk through today, I know that, we rolled out what was intended to be a consumer solution for protecting consumer accounts against ACH debits, and found that it was more attractive to treasury management as a positive pay solution. We went on to develop things with voice biometrics to protect outbound transactions. And when asked if we were ever going to introduce a check positive pay system, I was like, well, checks are going away. So I was reluctant to do that, but we'll talk about how you guys roped us into that shortly.
That's right. We've roped you into doing a few other things for us, too, with EDI and notification of changes.
That's right. That's right. So can you maybe share with the audience why you felt, or Trustmark felt, that you needed a new check positive pay system?
Absolutely. I think it's first and foremost of putting the customer first, and we've got to make it easy for our customer. And so we've got to have a solution that's an all-in-one solution so that they can go to one system, take care of the needs that they have financially. And then also it streamline a lot of back-end processes that we have at the bank, and also consolidating of vendors and systems that we use. So it's a real A to Z process there.
Okay. Yeah, it was quite eye-opening. So maybe we can talk a little bit about how we ended up developing a replacement solution for you, and how you feel the collaboration between our organizations is going to, or has benefited Trustmark and your clients.
I'll tell you that, from our perspective on this, for a vendor to take time to come on site, and we're in Jackson, Mississippi, and spend about 3 days with us to truly understand, take a deep dive into our processes, our operations, and try to understand how the bank functions, is insurmountable. I mean, what we typically deal with is a vendor who understands how a bank works and certainly understands what the customer needs. And so it's really, really great when you can have a partner in an approach that will understand what needs to take place, and then put in a process. And as we talked through how they built the solution around a lot of things, they provided feedback with us as well of how we can change some of our processes. So I think it was very good for the collaboration within the team.
I know that, just a little background, when you guys called us and you were involved in this and asked if we could develop a replacement for what you had, my first response was, I know ACH, but I know nothing about checks. So if you're willing to open up, let us come down, see what you're doing, learn. If we can do it, we will, and if we can't, we'll tell you we can't. And we were really fortunate that, after our engagement with you, we had about 4 or 5 of our other large institutions that allowed us to come in and do the same. And I think that by being able to observe what you guys were doing and the challenges you had, it made for us the ability to create something better, not just something that, would replace what you have, but something that would actually enhance the customer experience. It was very eye-opening for us. So it helped us as a company as well.
Well, it creates, a lot more of efficiencies as well, too, right? Because when you don't have that type of approach, then ultimately what happens is, from an operations or even an IT perspective, we've got to now adapt to the system that we've just purchased so that we can change processes that may need to be done, and even do extra programming around things that all could have been avoided if it could have just been a true partnership on the front end.
Well, and what I found interesting is when you guys first engaged us, we came down there. You had to wait because of some other initiatives. We went on to work with other institutions. Yet when we came back, you guys wanted to do that session where we talked about what gaps existed, and I think you were quite surprised, or we were all quite surprised, that with what we had gained from you and other institutions, we were able to bridge those. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges that your clients have had on your legacy system, what the experience has been for them, for where you have been?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think from a legacy system perspective, we required one specific file format for issued file. And so customers that didn't have a technology group were having to seek outside help in order to build a specific file format that we were able to intake, right? And so that's one component of that. I think that, as we look toward end-of-day cutoff time, we were doing a cutoff time of, later in the day. And so if you can think about your teller system, these issued checks, as we would deploy them to our teller system, at the end of the day, we were causing confusion and disruption because the customer may come to the branch before then and try to cash a check. And it was not showing appropriately there through the positive pay system, right, or our teller system. And then, I think that what we really want to try to do is change the approach of how we notify customers. We were also doing a timed perspective on when we let customers know that their exception items were out there for review. We had to do it at a specific time of day and create a program for that. And so we may have been notifying customers to go review exception items before exceptions had ever been posted to the online system. So a lot of customer confusion and not very user-friendly for them.
Well, based on the feedback that we got from you, we designed the ability for clients to be able to tell us what format their data was in and give them mapping templates that would allow them, if it were fixed length, to tell us where the start position was, where the end position, certain mandatory fields, but then optional fields as well, to provide a lot of flexibility. So there's a joke here in our shop that if I can set up a mapping template and it works, anybody can do it. So that feedback was invaluable from you guys.
Great.
How do you think implementing Pro CHEX as a replacement system, you've talked a little bit about it, but maybe talk to some of the things that you feel like they're going to gain?
Sure. I think what this does, again, putting the customer first, is this provides the same look and feel that ACH Alert that we had implemented already has. So it provides that same look. They're going to that same single sign-on perspective to get to where they need to go within the platform to handle not only the fraud piece of the ACH side, but also the check side, right? And that goes with how we sell the product. We package this together as a fraud packaging tool, and so that goes with how we do that. I think from an enhancement perspective, the flexibility in the file formats that you just mentioned are going to be key to this. Dual control, allowing a customer to, have dual control within the system, and then to take it one step further and fix a file after it's already been uploaded. That's huge for a customer. We would get customers that would send a file in, and then call all over the areas of the bank trying to get the file dropped because they had already submitted it. And so I think these are going to be things that really create efficiencies for us.
Very
and
good.
Enhancements to the customer.
And one of the things that I noticed at your shop as well as others is that because you were using different systems, that communication of issue item changes was very difficult to make it from your front end to your back end. And one of the things that by having an all-in-one solution, front end, back end, together, we were able to provide the ability for clients to modify issue items right up until the time a check has been presented. And so that was one of the other features that we learned by working with you that was necessary.
And for those that are listening that aren't on Positive Pay, I don't know that you realize how huge that is. Customers will send it one way and, oh my goodness, I forgot, and then they need to correct it. So that's really big.
Yeah, we've seen that with, file overrides and it creating multiple issue items in the same system with different statuses. So that was definitely something that needed to be addressed. All right, so we're going to do another audience poll.
Yes. So question here is, how many systems is your financial institution working with to deliver check positive pay services with payee positive pay to your clients? Follow the numbers. Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? Or is it 4 or more? And 2 is out to a very fast lead here. Do we have any more voters, please? Looks like, oh, there we go. So, Debbie, let me hand it back to you. It looks like 2 is sort of dominating. What do you make of that?
That doesn't surprise, well, it does surprise me a little bit because some of the institutions that we went into actually had 3. They had like a mainframe system for exception identification, a client front end, and then they had a separate system for analyzing payee. So those 3, not to mention, Laura, maybe you can speak to the number of jobs that had to be written to make those 3 interact with one another.
Right. I think that you captured all of it. I mean, I think that you always, typically what we see is a front end that's one system and a back end that's a different system, and then you've got to integrate all the solutions together in order to pass data back and forth. And so it's what a lot of operations was spending a lot of time on, even just in the morning process of looking at some of the exception things, is 3 screens pulled up on 3 different systems reviewing things. So.
Yeah, there's timing, there's the synchronization of those systems, and then just the overall cost of having to pay for multiple systems as well, and the overhead too. So, okay, if we take the poll question down, we'll move on. We kind of started talking about the operational process, but can you kind of describe what the operational process with your legacy system looked like?
Yeah, I could remember when your staff came on site and we took them down to the operations group, and there was just piles of paper, right, just stacked up, and it's a printing process of reviewing this, comparing it to one system to another system, looking at all of this, and our ops group would spend about 3 to 4 hours every morning coming in early to do this so that we could get the exception items posted out there by 9 a.m. in the morning. So just a lot of manual work going into these legacy processes.
Yeah, I think the team came back and said, we're going to save a lot of trees. And it's not so much the, your institution isn't alone, right? Going into all these other institutions that are larger scale, and I think that's important for those institutions that are on here that may be smaller right now. As you scale, that workload becomes much more difficult. And we saw that you guys were printing out paper and that there was one piece of paper per exception, and you were having to go to a green screen, and you were having to look up check images on another. And if doing recon, what we saw is that statements, reports, and even images burned on CD were all part of what had to happen on a monthly basis. So thankfully, working with you, working with our other institutions, we were able to get that down. talk a little bit about the features in our system that you feel like are going to streamline that operational process. I could do it, but let's hear it from you.
Yeah. Sure. No, I think what this does, though, is it puts the onus back on the customer. They're the ones that are issuing the checks. They need to have a system that they can go to where they supply this appropriately, right? And then from a back-end perspective, for our operations team to not spend 3 hours doing everything that we just named, it's going to be a much better process. I think for the end-user experience piece of this, it's really going to provide a streamlined one-stop shop to cover everything they need from a fraud perspective, right? From an operational perspective at the bank even, this is an allocation of a couple of resources that could be to do other functions in the bank. So,
yeah, so the screen that I have up here totally eliminates multiple screens, multiple inquiry into different systems, the paper, and the ability, if you have multiple operators that are trying to scrub checks, the ability to have those flow over and allocated in whatever way you want to configure it, keeps that process running, statistical information that lets you see how operators are performing. All of that are things that you didn't have before.
Well, and Debbie, before you go on real quick, I'll just say to even have that in a web-type view instead of a green screen, I mean, provides a tremendous amount of value and ease of use for this day and age, right?
I actually had another institution that we were working with tell me that their challenge was the people that they had working on the mainframe were getting ready to retire, and they couldn't hire people that could work on green screens anymore, that was just a technology they couldn't hire for. So that was a really interesting approach to, comment that I had heard. So by being able to eliminate like a lot of the manual labor overhead and retire potentially multiple legacy type systems, how do you think that's going to impact your bottom line?
Yeah, so my conservative number here is going to be about $500,000 annually. And this is really just taking 3 systems and combining efforts right there. That doesn't include the operational aspects that we just mentioned from the bank perspective, or a fee adjustment. We didn't offer payee positive pay, so we'll be able to add on the incremental cost associated with that in order to provide an increased revenue stream from a payee positive pay and a consolidated approach. So from an increase of fees perspective, we'll be able to grow revenue as well.
We might should charge you more, huh?
I think we're good, Debbie.
Yeah, no, your response should be, I should get commission on what you sell.
True.
All right. Before the check positive pay project started, and, we were really thankful for that opportunity because it really was a game changer for our company. You and I have worked on 3 other initiatives, so changing away from checks, going to ACH where I'm more comfortable. Can you talk a little bit about what prompted Trustmark to do away with ACH blocks and filters and adopt an ACH positive pay solution?
Yeah, you know how it's just within the industry, we warn people today, don't click the link. We were sending a link. It was a secure link, but we were sending one. And so I think going from an older, outdated vendor process of sending a secure email with a link that you could log into to accept this type of information, we had to move away from and modernize, right? So that was the main reason why we ended up moving over to this system. The other reason is the flexibility on some of this. We also, at that point in time with that vendor, you could block all or block none. So we couldn't really block anything specific without grabbing the company ID, like the originator. In order to get that, we could block that specific transaction, but then we had to go to that bank and get that information. So this provides us with a lot more enhanced solution, I'll say.
Yeah, what we heard was some of the problems with blocks and filters is that the system would arbitrarily send it back. They wouldn't have the ability to see those items and decide to go ahead and pay them. Additionally, to your point, to set up something that's either pre-authorized or something you want to block in the future, that had to be done in advance, where you had to ask your customer to go to their trading partner and get the company ID they were going to use in the batch header record. Well, yeah, you know the adoption rates of that. So by being able to grab that information when they pay an item, allow them to store that in our database, that was just a real game changer, I think, in the industry overall, and that's shown with the adoption. We've also seen, you know, institutions go from 600 accounts on old filters to 2,800 accounts within a 18-month period. And instead of having 3 full-time people working on maintenance of blocks and filters, they were able to reallocate 2 full-time people to other duties. So the efficiencies, again, you know, which for what you guys are doing and with the number of customers you're trying to service, it's pretty critical. So another audience poll.
So the poll question is, what do you see as the biggest barrier to your clients implementing check and or ACH positive pay? Could it be too time-consuming? Could it be an inconvenient experience? Might it be the fees, or is there something else that you think is that barrier? So if we could take a few moments and let folks cast their votes. Looks like things are stabilizing on the too time-consuming part of the question. So Debbie, what do you make of that?
Well, at first when I saw fees at 100%, I'm like, oh wow, Laura, we're going to have a talk about how you overcome that. But this one is more in line with what I was expecting. What Laura's talked about, the challenges that positive pay services present to customers, you know, check positive pay, getting issue items in a specific format, you know, dealing with issues if files don't load properly. Laura, what are your thoughts? I mean, I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, from a bank perspective on this, I agree from the legacy system of it being too time-consuming. I mean, we went from it taking seriously a month or more to get a customer up on positive pay to with a matter of hours as soon as we get signed paperwork back. So I think that Debbie's solution and everything that her team has built from an efficiency perspective and the ease to use the system, they've taken care of that concern. The fee side of it, I'll address that too. That's all in how it's communicated to the customer, right? 100%. A customer doesn't mind spending $100 or more on a cell phone bill every month or their TV every month. This is an insurance, so to speak, perspective on how they're going to protect their data and their account and their finances. And I think customers are willing to do that. We've not had any customers balk over the cost of any of the fraud packaging that we've got. And like I said, we've got just 600 customers on positive pay alone.
And I agree with you 100%. It all is the way it's presented, because what I've seen is, even out talking to other businesses, being a business, previous business owner myself, most businesses really don't understand their exposure. They don't understand their limited time frame. And what I've seen effective is, once that's explained and you say, this is a service we can provide, if you don't want it, please sign here, that does change the whole dynamic, because then they realize that they're taking responsibility for that account. Okay, so now we're going to shift from positive pay and talk a little bit about years and years ago, the federal government mandated that institutions needed to be able to provide EDI information that's embedded in ACH transactions in human readable format. This is another solution that when you guys came to us and said, can you provide us a solution, I thought, oh, for heaven's sakes, that should already be solved in the industry. But can you talk a little bit about the challenges you were having with the technology that you had available to address that?
So what we were providing to the customers was really just like a text formatted PDF looking type file. Here it is. And so what do you do with that, right? I mean, customers are wanting information that they can ingest directly into different systems and have it in a different variety of formats. And so what we were providing was not very user-friendly for the end user at all.
And from what I remember, notifications were going out to them based off settlement date and not necessarily when those were posting, and that was causing a disconnect too.
Absolutely. You're right, Debbie. Yep.
So what we worked together to do is change that from human readable, which would require manual posting, to something that would be computer usable, where they could automate more functions. So how's that been received so far by your customers?
Oh, very well. I mean, we've been able to grow the EDI service, I think, at about a 17% year over year as we've deployed this. So I think it was received very well.
And that's been a revenue generator as well, right?
That's right.
Good.
And
Good.
again, able to change fees from what we were offering to this modern enhanced solution.
Okay. So you were able to actually up the fee because you were bringing them more value. Okay. We'll shift away from EDI now because I know you guys do a lot of ACH origination, and some of those customers have return items, and they also have notification of change, information that you need to pass on. Can you talk a little bit about the old way, new way?
Yeah, so this was very similar to the vendor that we used with EDI, and it was that secure email link that would go out to customers to where they would have to log into it and retrieve the data, looking exactly like that PDF format that was before. So same process, and so what we've done is completely enhanced that.
So again, they can get that in an electronic form, so if they need to reverse something in their accounting system, they can do that. And today your customers go to how many websites to get these 4 solutions?
At that time, it was probably 4 different solutions.
Okay.
Yes.
And so they're coming into one now, right? They'll be able to access all that information.
One-stop shop with the customer. That's right.
All right. Well, Laura, thank you for sharing what you guys have done to modernize, check and ACH positive pay and how that's impacted your institution. We'll open it up for questions now.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Before we head into Q&A, a couple things. First, I'd like to let everyone know that it's not too late to ask a question if you haven't already. All you need to do is type it into the Q&A box on your screen. And I'd also like to encourage the attendees to take a few moments to fill out the survey that will be appearing on your screen. You can also find a link to that survey in the right-hand box on your screen as well. So now we'll take some questions that have come in during the discussion. So here's the first question is, we use a mainframe system for recon and scrubbing exceptions that requires a lot of manual work for our staff. Will the system Trustmark purchased allow us to eliminate that system and those processes?
So Laura, do you want to speak to that, or do you want me to share what I know?
My answer is yes, so you can speak.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Again, we talked a little bit about that, seeing the green screen, taking the paper, matching that up, looking at everything in the mainframe, then having to go to a web viewer, and then a separate system in some cases for payee verification. And so all of that's been consolidated into on one single screen in a web-based application. So it definitely streamlines the scrubbing process.
Yeah. And again, taking it to a web browser system that's more modern really helps the end user using the system.
Okay, next question is, are check positive pay, ACH positive pay, and the EDI and ACH return electronic file delivery all available on a single platform? And if so, can they be purchased individually, or do they have to be purchased as a bundle?
Okay, good question. So we provide a base platform that we call Fraud Prevention HQ, and an institution can choose to buy one or multiple service modules. So in Trustmark's case, you guys have 4, or is it 5 now, actually, with the credit part of ACH positive pay, and your customers access that platform through single sign-on from your digital banking platform. So it's one platform The service modules can not only be purchased separately, but you can provision the service modules on a client-by-client basis as well.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that, you know, as we talk about these different modules and then being purchased separately, I'll say that the delivery of code with it being accurate in each one of these models that we've purchased every time there's an update or upgrade is impeccable. I mean, we don't typically find with a vendor that we don't have to test it first. We test it, Debbie. But the code accuracy is very accurate, which is very good.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay. And the final question that's come in is, what type of integration is supported, and what is the typical timeline to implement these services?
So the timeline is really dependent upon resource availability at the financial institution. We have implemented service modules in as little as 2 weeks, and we've taken as much as a year. Whenever an institution has a massive conversion, they, you know, are shifting from mainframe. There's a lot that has to happen there. So it really is dependent on the financial institution, the speed that they want to go. What was the other part of that question? We talked about timeline.
What type of integration is supported?
Okay, so we do support single sign-on for client access and even FI access with most of the digital banking platform providers out there. We also have a variety of APIs where institutions, if they want to build their own front end, for instance, we have what's called a client gateway API. We have an enrollment entitlement API that allows, if they have one system that they want to provision services across clients, we can support that. In terms of day-to-day processing, the beauty of it is most of these services just insert into the process flow, so we don't have to be integrated with your core or any other system to be able to provide the services, which makes for the quicker timelines.
Okay, so that does wrap up the questions that we've had. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Laura, for sharing your insights with us today. As a follow-up to today's session, attendees will receive an email from BAI within 24 hours that will include a link to today's webinar recording. We encourage you to share that link with your team or with other peers who might benefit from the insights that Laura and Debbie shared with us today. You can learn more about BAI and find other relevant content and actionable insights, such as the BAI Banking Strategies podcast. All of that is on our website, bai.org. This concludes our session. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.